Welcome to another episode of DD on the Spot. As always, I'm your host, Ryan Johnson. And before I get to our guest here today, I'd like to remind everyone that if you enjoy this content, to please give a like and subscribe down below. I'd greatly appreciate it. We have Patricia Gerber on the podcast. She's an NPC competitor, also an SYLL athlete. We'll talk about what that is. And then she's also a personal trainer, as well as a legislative aide, our first ever legislative aide. So I have a few questions in for that. We'll figure out what exactly that job entails. And she's coming to us all the way from Michigan, but most importantly, she's our current guest. Patricia, thank you so much for being on.
Yes, thanks for asking me.
Absolutely. So why don't you give us a little bit of a backstory on how your fitness journey began? What really inspired and motivated you to get in shape and adapt that lifestyle?
I always was kind of involved in CrossFit and running and just little things like that. But in going into 2017, I made it my New Year's resolution to hire a coach and compete in my first bodybuilding competition. So I found a coach and talked to him about it. And then January 1st of 2017, I just hit the ground running. And it's been almost 3 years now. And I'm hoping to go pro eventually.
And that's awesome. And being that you did start out in CrossFit and other types of workouts, was it a struggle for you adjusting to the bodybuilding style workouts where, I mean, your training is a lot more different with CrossFit? It's a lot more body weight exercises, whereas, in the gym, doing the bodybuilding workout, it's a lot more weights.
Yeah, and CrossFit was a lot more social. Bodybuilding was all on me. So just having a regimented plan and being like, okay, you have to be in the gym 5 to 6 days a week, no matter what. Whereas CrossFit, I could pop in whenever I wanted to, maybe get there 2 to 3 times a week. It was a lot more intense, and I mean, I saw the improvements really fast just from forcing myself to go those extra days and follow the plan to a T.
Well, and also with CrossFit, you can eat whatever you want basically afterwards because the amount of
Oh
work that
yeah.
you. So yeah, that's why when I have these CrossFitters on, I was like, you have the body of a bodybuilder basically, and you get to eat whatever you want. I was like, you are so lucky because of all the bodybuilders that we have on, just the stories of how you have to just regiment your diet and everything. I mean,
Yeah.
I cannot tell that enough about how CrossFitters. I don't know how they do it. But was there a specific moment or event that really inspired you to do that, or was it just over time where you're just like, you know what, hey, I want to give this a shot?
It was about a year after graduating college, and I realized I was getting way too involved in the happy hours and unhealthy habits. I was gaining weight, and honestly, I was like, "What are my hobbies?" Like, my hobbies are going to get a drink with coworkers after work. Like, I don't want that to be my hobby. So I found something that kept me busy with that, and it turned out to be a passion of mine. So it was a good path to take.
And that's just so awesome. And I mean, one of the questions that I ask all of my guests is, if you were to walk into a gym with 100 people, there's 100 different ways as to how those people got into shape, whether it comes down to, I mean, your diet, your nutrition, how many reps you do. I mean, there's so many little things that add up to the overall package that people end up seeing. When you went into the bodybuilding field, because you did have that background in CrossFit though, was it a struggle for you to find out what worked best for your body? Because I always say, everyone's body is so different when it comes down to what works best for that.
Yeah, and I mean, even my first day going into a gym with weights, I was definitely dealing with gym intimidation. You have all those big, strong guys in one area, and you don't really want to go pick up your barbells because you have to do the workout your coach said. But I got over that, and in the beginning, I asked some of the personal trainers for help, and just kept pushing through. I would spend like 3 hours at the gym because I'd have to YouTube how to do all these different workouts. Um, so it definitely was getting over the fear of gym intimidation and just like telling myself, okay, I belong here. Like I have to start somewhere. And now I'm a personal trainer there. So it came full circle.
Well, yeah, and it's like now, believe it or not, too, for me, like I had gym intimidation, but it was because the first time I ever really did work out was, in eighth grade, and my brother was a junior in high school, and he was the starting varsity quarterback, and I would go into the gym with him, and just having everyone's eyes look on me as the brother of like the head honcho in the school. Yeah, that was pretty intimidating for me, but it's one of those things too where once you go in there and just start, I mean, and get used to it, I mean, the
Yeah.
intimidation really does go away. And that's a big thing that I think a lot of women have too, like that gym fear, that gym intimidation where they see, these big 300-pound guys, walking around, but then just realizing that, like no one really knows that you exist really in the gym. Let's be honest. They're in their own mindset. They're in their own head. So I mean, the sooner that you really just go in there and take that first step, you just realize like, hey, this isn't really that big of a deal. So yeah, that's one thing too.
And I have a lot of clients that they want to do home workouts because they don't want to go to the gym because they're intimidated. And I have to tell them that, like, we did all start somewhere. No one is paying attention to you, I promise. And even now, I do embarrassing things at the gym. And, we're not all being perfect, bodybuilders at the gym. You're going to mess up sometimes. You're going to drop a weight. You're going to need a spotter, we're all dealing with it.
Well, and it's always just so much trial and error too, kind of like what you're talking about, where I always say you're like kind of like a mad scientist trying to make your own potion, where it's just so fascinating just to see the differences. But another question that I like to ask everyone that comes on, because everyone's genetics are different. So I always love these answers. What was one body part when you were getting started that really, really took off for you where you don't have to train it as much now? And then everyone always has that one body part that really lags behind when you get started. I mean, I've said this a million times. For me, my back is the thing that really took off, and being 6'3", I mean, my legs are just shot, where that's one thing that really I need to work on all the time. But what were those body parts for you?
I definitely was excited about my biceps, especially once I was getting closer to my show and I could see veins popping up. I'd be like, wow, this is a real deal. I didn't have any idea that I could look like this. And then when I was like 1 or 2 weeks out, I had veins on my abs. And I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like I got turned inside out. So just like it's so fascinating to me that we can literally take our bodies to these levels and anybody can do it. If I can do it, anybody can do it. And so I think the veins popping up close to show day was the most fascinating to me.
Now, I've never got lean enough to have veins on my abs, but I have had veins on my arms. But what is that feeling like too when you look in the mirror and you look completely different from what you've normally looked before? Like does it feel sort of alien to you where you're like, oh my God, I can't believe I look like this?
Yeah, I mean, so being stage lean doesn't really look normal in everyday life. Um, I've gotten comments like, "You look anorexic," or somebody said something about being on The Walking Dead. Because
That's a good one. I'm not gonna lie. That's a good one. Yes.
yeah, you look kind of malnourished
Hmm.
because I mean, but that's what it takes to get to this stage is you got to lose the body fat and especially my first show I hadn't put on as much muscle, so I was definitely very thin, but those comments are unnecessary.
Oh, yeah, yeah, I know. I totally, yeah, we hear those stories all the time. But how long into your journey before you decide, like, hey, I want to really do a show, or was it even before you started the bodybuilding workouts, or just the normal weight training before you wanted to go do a show?
So like I said, I was always doing CrossFit, but I started the training when I decided to do a show because that was my goal. I was like, I'm gonna get serious about this. Hired a coach, and we went straight from there. And thankfully, he took me on, and I mean, I got first call outs that year, so it went well.
Well, and I always gotta say, everyone get a coach too if you're really gonna do bodybuilding. That helps so much. We've had people that have, tried to do it all by themselves, and 99% of the time it doesn't end well. We did have that 1%er on where things ended up well, but I was like, okay, you don't know how lucky you are that things really turned out the way that they did. But when you were going on to prep, I mean, I always like to say people just don't realize, the general public, that going on to prep just takes so much hard work and effort just to be able to get the body to look like you could go on a prep. 90% of the population wouldn't be able to achieve that. But then going on a prep, you're just notching things up to an extreme level where it comes to, like you said, you got to go to workout, 5 to 6 times a week. Your dieting has to be perfect. What was that like adjusting to that lifestyle? Because like you said, you were someone before who, enjoyed going out for drinks with coworkers. That's not something that you're going to be able to do when you're in prep. Was that a struggle for you just adapting to that lifestyle?
It was at first saying no to things and I definitely lost some friends, but I realized that they were people that I only drank with, like because I would always be down to drink. They would always be down to drink. So kind of filtering things like that out has given me a better quality of life, and just having a regimented lifestyle, like it forces you to prioritize what's important to you. So like since my schedule is so busy, I have to pick and choose the most important things, and I feel like I've made so much progress just in other aspects besides the gym because I've learned to work hard and I've learned to prioritize and time manage.
That is, that time management is one of those things that I don't really ever talk about on this show, but that is the number one thing that I think you really need to have down pat, especially if you're really competing in bodybuilding, just because, I mean, you have to just be like, okay, at this exact time, I got to get this workout in and it has to be done. So yeah,
Yes.
that's one thing, even me just getting in shape better and just working out, where I'm just like, okay, my time management has to be absolutely
Yes, and I
spot
teach
on.
class at the gym at 6 a.m. So if I'm gonna get my workout in, I have to wake up at 4 a.m. to get that in before I teach. And when it gets closer to show day, my cardio goes up. I'm waking up at 3 a.m. to do all that before I teach and do my 9 to 5, and then I'm a dog mom, so I have those responsibilities too.
Jesus. No, like I work nights, so I get off at around, midnight-ish, but I'm going to bed by around like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock some nights because I go home, get something to eat, watch a little TV or just relax for a little bit. So literally you're getting up around the time I'm going to sleep most nights. So that's I have some of these guests on and I'm like, okay, yeah, that's absolutely crazy. But yeah, it's just so inspiring what people have to go through in order to reach those goals. But one of the biggest myths and stereotypes that I love to bust on this podcast, I ask it for every single guest because, everybody always needs to constantly be reminded of this because it's gotten so much better, I'd say, the last 5 years with Instagram. But there are still so many women that have that fear where, they go to the gym, they do one bicep curl, they do one push up or pull up or anything that has to do with exercise or at least the lifting weight aspect. They're going to, just hulk out and put on 50 pounds of muscle overnight. And I always say to that, sign me up. I'd pay my entire life savings for you to be my personal trainer. I mean, it's definitely one of those things. But even when you were getting into CrossFit before you started the bodybuilding, was that a fear that you had? And even if it wasn't, I mean, I bet you hear that all the time still now being a personal trainer. How do you like to respond to that when you hear it?
Yeah, to be honest, it was never really a fear of mine, but I do hear about it a lot. And even the other day, a coworker of mine asked, "How much protein should I be consuming?" And I kind of spitballed a number based on the information she gave me. And she's like, "Well, I don't want to turn into the Hulk." I was like, "Okay, if you could, if you could turn into the Hulk just by eating protein, you'd be on stage or something."
Yeah.
I don't know. So I try to tell people that. I mean, I've been lifting really heavy for 3 years, and I'm nowhere near where this fear is. You know, people, I don't even know why people think that, probably just because of the stereotype from the women that are taking hormones and stuff like that. But um I just explain the benefits of, resistance training in general.
Well, I even tell them, I was like, look at most guys, they don't get like that. So it's like if the guys can't and they're already at that unfair advantage with the testosterone, it's like think about what the women can. It's like it's absolutely ridiculous. But it's always nice to educate people like that because that's one of those things where once they realize, hey, if I do a few curls or whatever, I'm not gonna, all of a sudden get super massive. And weight
Yeah.
training has so many benefits to people that just a lot of the general public doesn't realize. And it's a great way to burn calories as well. And I know especially women, they're always looking for that fix on how to burn those extra calories so they can have
Yes.
their wine nights and they can do all that other type of stuff. Whatever the women do when they're all alone. I have no idea.
And that's what I tell them too, is the more muscle mass you have, the more calories you're burning while at rest. So, that's always a plus as well.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. But that also brings me into, I mean, the thing that I also love to discuss is just the confidence boost that working out gives, especially women. I think that affects them more than it affects guys, just because, you see all these guys that might walk into the gym and they look huge and, they just act like they own the place. And that's just, how some guys are. Well, first of all, give me that confidence, first of all. But then
Yeah.
just with women alone, I mean, just a lot of them do have that confidence issue when they walk into the gym, like you said, with the gym intimidation. But once they really get into it, just that confidence boost can be so helpful. How have you taken that confidence boost and use it to impact everything in your life? Because I always say that's the one thing from working out that you really can translate into every other aspect of your life.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like women tend to be a little bit more submissive, and since I've been lifting, I feel like, I feel like I'm stronger than half the guys that work at my at my gym at this point. Not to toot my own horn, but it's definitely boosted my confidence. And even in the workplace, like if I get a comment like "sweetie" or "honey," I don't now. 3 years ago I wouldn't have responded, but now I'll be like, "Don't call me that" or something like
Mhm.
that. Like I'm definitely way more empowered, and don't take those kind of condescending comments, or if a guy tries to correct my form or something, like I don't take that lightly either. So that's definitely changed since I've learned how to lift correctly and lifted heavy. And like I said, like I take that to work with me as well.
I got called honey by my boss once, and that was one of the weirdest days of my life. I think he thought that he was talking to someone else, and he's like, "Oh, can you get that for me, honey?" And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Oh no, I thought you were so." He's like, "Oh no, never mind, never mind." And I was like, "Okay, I'll just try to erase that from my mind for the rest of my life." But yeah. So that's my funny honey story. But yeah, it's just so important too to just realize that just that confidence boost impacts so many people. Like we've had people that have made drastic life changes because of that confidence boost that they give. And that if I were to give out a brochure about the benefits of weightlifting, that would probably be number one, just that confidence boost that you can get. But one of the things that isn't talked about really at all on Instagram, I don't think, but it is probably, in my opinion, the most important thing when it comes to recovery is sleep. I mean, I had one of the best sleep specialists on the planet call, and like I always say, he's from the UK, and he had one of those accents where you're just like, oh my God, it's the greatest thing I've ever heard. Where you're just like, I even told him, I was like, you're just gonna talk the entire time and I'm gonna listen, because he had just one of those upper posh, upper mid or upper class posh British accents where it was just so beautiful to listen to. We were talking about sleep, and it's just one of those things that I don't think is talked about enough. What is the recommended amount of sleep that you try to get, and what are some tips and tricks that you use in order to get that? Because I know, being a dog mom and having the busy schedule that you have, sleep is going to be something that you're really going to have to fight hard to get the proper amount.
Yeah, so I always try to get 8 hours, but once for some reason, every time I get super lean, I have such a hard time staying asleep. I think it has something to do with the hormones. Number one thing that I did to help my sleep lately, though, is get my dog his own bed, because sharing a bed with a Great Dane can definitely be a struggle. He has a lot of bad dreams too, so he would be like, "What's that?" His own bed. I started sleeping better. Sometimes I'll take melatonin if I know that I'm kind of stir crazy, like I can't settle my mind down or something. I have no problem taking melatonin, and I'm a big fan of reading and journaling, so that kind of slows my mind down as well, just to like get my thoughts on paper.
I totally didn't even think about that. That, like, I was like, how is she gonna get to sleep with that big old Great Dane right next to her too? Because I'm like, if that thing's having a bad dream, if that thing's kicking, it's like, good luck. I mean, that's like a queen size bed that thing would fit on in and of itself. But now, because you did bring it up, and I'm a huge dog lover, I'm gonna just ask her a few quick Great Dane questions, because I've always been fascinated with the breed, just because they are basically tanks. I mean, they're monsters. They're monster dogs. They're nice dogs though, but I mean, just looking at them, you're like, holy crap. So, what made you decide to get a Great Dane, knowing that, I mean, like, it's basically like having a bear?
Yeah, so it was completely spontaneous. It was actually the day of my show. My mom texted me a picture of him. She was at the animal shelter making herself sad.
Mhm.
And she was like, "I found the most perfect dog. You have to meet him." And I was like, "Mom, I'm getting ready for my first NPC show. Like, I can't think about this right now." And then I was like, "Wait, okay, can you bring him home, and like I'll come meet him tomorrow?" And then I couldn't stop thinking about him. I'm like, I'm supposed to be concentrating on this show, and I can't stop thinking about the dog. So the next day, I drove to the animal shelter, which he was a shelter dog. Great Danes aren't there very often, so I kind of won the lottery with that. And so I drove there, met him. He was just this skinny 10-month-old Great Dane and so lovey. And I couldn't get him in the car. It took 6 employees, and he was fighting all of us. The poor guy. And I almost at that point was like, never mind. Like, how am I going to get this dog in the car by myself? But I went through with it, went and got his food, cage, everything, and I was really nervous, but it's the best decision I've ever made, and we're going on 3 years together. So
So, and how quickly does he grow, or did he grow? Because I mean, I saw a video of him before, and guys, he's massive, and going from 10 months to that, was it just like every week basically that he just kept getting bigger and bigger?
yeah, well, he was 10 months and he was already over 100 pounds.
Jesus.
Yeah, so he was really skinny and he definitely filled out, but he probably put on another like 30 pounds, I'd say. He's like 120, 130 now. So
Jesus. Yeah, my dog is like 8 pounds. So yeah, that is pretty sizable weight. But yeah, that's just massive. But yeah, I mean, that's just so awesome. But also, I mean, just Great Danes are just one of the big things that I always like to ask to a Great Dane owner, just because they're also known as, I forgot what it's called, but because they do have sort of a shorter life expectancy or whatever. Are there any ways that you're just trying that to really keep him healthy so that he can live longer?
yeah, so that was one thing my mom warned me about
Hmm.
before I got him, but I try to keep him as healthy as possible. I want to eventually switch him to a raw food diet. I have a friend that has 4 Great Danes, and that's what she does with them. Um,
Four
and
Great Danes. What the? How the hell is, like? What? How big is her
she
house?
watches. I Yeah, no, it's amazing. I like to get another one, but I need a
Yeah.
bigger place first.
Mhm.
And then we go to the dog park often. I mean, we walk at least 5 miles a day together, and that's another thing about having a dog is it keeps you active.
Yep.
Like if you don't stay active with your dog, they're bouncing off the wall. So you got to keep up on it.
Unless you get like a bulldog or something like that, then that thing just sits
True.
around all day. Yeah, that thing's just chilling out. But yeah, that's just so important. But yeah, again, everyone, go and look up Great Danes if you want to, because they're just so awesome. I mean, just how big they are. I mean, I can't even say enough about Great Danes. But going back to your competing history, so one of the things that you can see obviously is that I'm one of the palest people that you ever meet in your entire life, being from the upper Midwest. I mean, being in Michigan, that's sort of the upper Midwest as well. But I mean,
Yeah.
being an upper Midwesterner, that we don't get that much sunlight. And when we do, a lot of people, they either just get burnt to an absolute crisp, or they just, get a farmer sandwich. Let's be honest, that's not a real tan. But what was that
Right.
feeling like for you when you got to put that tan on and see everything really pop out? And a lot of people talk about, like, you see muscles that you never even knew that you had. Everything really seems to get, more defined and bigger. What is that feeling like for you?
The tanning experience is interesting. I, always said that if there was one reason I quit, it would be because of the tan. It's so
Yep.
messy on everything. You have to bring your own sheets to the hotel. I mean, it's just a mess. And again, it's another thing where it looks really strange in person. I mean, you're like basically orange, but it looks more normal on stage. But yeah, the tan is it's a pain. That's the one part about competing I just do not like.
Well, and I'm not even going to go into it because I was shocked the first time when I heard about how you guys get it applied and what that scenario is, because I would have never thought that you would be there. I'd be like, they make them do that?
No one talks about it. So like the first day I went in, I was like, wow, we get to see all our
Yeah.
competition up close and personal before we actually
I
compete.
had never knew, because like I followed bodybuilding just a tad before I started this podcast, where I wasn't really like, every once in a while, like if the old stuff was on like ESPN, I'd watch it or whatever, just to watch it. But I had no idea that was like backstage. So the first time someone told me that, I was like, okay, what are you lying? Like, is that? But then when everyone started to say that too, I was like, okay, that's actually like a thing. That's fascinating. But I always like to say, you like have to become a statue too, like what you're talking about. You can't sit on anything. You can't really lean up against anything. You have to bring your own bed sheets. I mean, and that just adds more, where you're just looking at these people and you're like, God, how crazy must they be that they're still willing to do it? But that just shows all the dedication that goes into that. But the number one thing that really shocked me, other than, how you guys get your tan applied, but the number one thing for me personally was, I would have never guessed it in a million years. This would be the hardest thing for most of the competitors, but for so many people, posing is the hardest thing for them. I mean, it's harder than your nutrition. It's harder than your working out. I like to compare it now to, I mean, you can be a great driver. You can never be a perfect driver. You can be a great poser. You can never be a perfect poser. It's always ever evolving. What has your experience with posing been like?
So I actually have a posing session later today in Detroit. And I am really excited for it, but it kills my back. Like I always get back cramps like when I'm sleeping after it. And holding the poses on stage when the judges are, judging, I get very nervous that I'm gonna drop from a Charlie horse or something, which is why it's important to stay hydrated. And my coach would have me bring Pedialyte or something to replenish electrolytes, just because the cramping is so common. The posing is almost a full workout itself.
Oh yeah. We've had so many people talk about that, where it's like, I got more of a workout in just doing the posing. But before I ask, no, I'll just ask it ahead anyway, and then I'll come back to it. But what is your favorite pose to do, and what is your least favorite pose to do?
Um, Not to be a cliche bikini competitor, but I really like the back pose, especially when I get the glute ham tie-in. I'm always really proud of that, and I'm really proud of my back and my glutes and all of that. And it's the easiest one for me, honestly. Holding the front pose, I feel like I'm so worried about so many things. Is my hair set right? Am I smiling even though I'm in pain? And my hips twisted correctly. So back pose is definitely my favorite. I don't have to smile when I'm doing that one either.
That's one thing that I always say too. It's like, you can let your guard down. You can be like, oh my God, I can get a little breath in. I can, just stop putting on that smile. Cause so many times, like if it were me, I'd be trying my hardest just not to grit my teeth together. And just when I'm smiling, just be like, oh my God, I'm just flexing my butt off. But one thing that you talked
Yeah.
about is, because, like to not get a Charlie horse, you do have to sort of, get those electrolytes back in. But people don't realize that you can't really drink any water on show day for a lot of competitors. I mean, you've cut your water down, you do that. So how do you get those electrolytes in if you can't really drink any fluids?
So it's interesting because each coach has a different approach. And in my experience, I've actually had water increased.
Oh.
And I was actually blown away by that, because I've seen so many competitors go through with cutting water,
Mhm.
which honestly, I don't really agree with cutting water, just from the experiences I've seen. And it seems like all of the people that won the overall in my shows also kept water in. So having to cut out the fluids was never an issue for me. If anything, I'll take some kind of diuretic, coffee, or Expel, and that will do the job rather than completely cutting out water.
And I gotta say, just being a human being, everyone, do not cut out fluids anyway. Anyway,
Yeah.
it's like, yeah, just don't do it. I mean, yeah. So, but yeah, and that's just, I mean, how different coaches do it and how people get to different results. Again, that just goes down to people's genetics and how they train. And there's not one. I'll always say this: there's not one perfect way to do things. there's about 100 good ways to do it. So it's just about finding out what works best for you. But I ask this question to every guest that I have, whether they be my bands or my health and fitness guests. For my bands, I always ask, what is that feeling like when you get to go on stage and perform live in front of hundreds of thousands of people? And then that also applies to the bodybuilders that I have. What is that feeling like for you when you get to walk on stage and show off all that hard work that you've worked so hard to achieve?
Oh, it feels so good, but it's also pretty nerve-wracking. I think my first show I blacked out, don't really know what happened. I saw the video later. But last time I was literally a little bit more mentally prepared. So it's just amazing hearing your friends and family cheering for you, your teammates cheering for you, and you put in months of hard work and you finally get to show it off. It's an incredible feeling. There's nothing like it.
And I always say, like, just find that one thing that really just works for you in life, and just go with it. I mean, we're on this planet for such a short amount of time. Just find out what makes you happy and stick to it. But now, one of the things that isn't talked about enough, I don't say, or isn't really brought up too much, that I love to talk about, another myth and stereotype, is that a lot of people believe that, these competitors, they're able to look like that year round. They don't realize that look that you present on stage, that is not sustainable. I mean, even for the guys, you'll look at them a week later and they will not look the same. People don't realize, because you've cut out a lot of things and because of all of that hard work and training, that's not a sustainable look. You're not going to be able to look that lean 24/7. A lot of people, I've had friends come up to me and be like, I enjoy their podcast. And the most surprising thing was, I thought these people, just because they worked their butt off for so long, they were able to look like that. But what was that experience like for you when you first realized, and just coping with the fact, sort of, I should say, really, that, I'm going to look, when I go on stage, the best that I'm going to look for a while. And then after that, I do have to put on weight because it's not going to be able to be attainable to keep looking like that.
Yeah, I was definitely very naive in thinking that I've worked so hard. There's no way I'm going to rebound. Like I watched so many people do it, but I was like, that's not going to happen to me. Well, it did. And I was actually dealing with binge eating for a while after my first show, just because my hunger was just insatiable. I think I would order like an entire pizza and just smash it. And so that's why I gained the weight so fast. So my second show, I was a lot more aware after experiencing it and learned that the reverse diet is very important. I mean, you've been cutting out calories slowly for months, so now you have to slowly add them back in to avoid the weight gain. And like you said, like, looking stage lean is not sustainable. We are literally tweaking everything, every part and every minute of the day to look like that for a couple of hours. We're adding salts like 20 minutes before we go on stage to make the veins pop. We are pumping up backstage. We're, getting a little workout in. There's all these techniques that go into it to look that way on stage. I mean, I don't know anybody that can look that way year round, and it's not healthy. I mean, just going back to the hormone thing, your hormones need time to regulate. You need time to build your relationship with food, and if you want to put on more muscle, you need to increase your calories afterwards.
Again, and just to add on to that, I mean, unfortunately, there are, I think, one of the bad things, or one of the things that really helps perpetuate that myth, though, is that there are, let's be honest, there are those 1%ers that are just the most genetically blessed freaks of all time, where they can look like that year round. And then you look at them and you're like, oh my God, I hate you so much. I had one of them on too, and she, like, I thought that, like, she was maybe doing something a little extra or whatever like that. And I was like, there's no way that you're able to look like that just year round naturally. And then luckily for her, she had a photo of, like, when she was 10 years old, like close to her. So she went and got it. And I was like, she had a damn 8-pack when she was 10. I was like, okay, she wasn't juicing up back then. So I was like, that's not even fair. I was like, that's ridiculous. But yeah, so
It's so not fair.
yeah, you look at those people and you're like, and we had another girl too who did a natural show, and she didn't lift any weights at all. She did all body weight exercises, and she won it. And she didn't even take a posing class or anything. She just went on there. She just went on stage. But honestly, I think for her, she kind of agreed, where she's like, I was just in such better shape than everyone else, where my posing could be a little not as good. And then the judges would be like, okay, she still looks so much better than everyone else that we are going to have to give her,
Yeah.
the trophy. But still, I mean, yeah, I've had those weird stories. So I think that also hurts too, where people just look at those people and they don't realize that they're like 1 in a billion or 1 in a million, where you look at them and you're like, how are they able to still stay like that? And then they think that that's a sustainable look. So yeah, unfortunately that's true, but more power to those people. But if I ever meet you in an alleyway, it's like, I'm not going to be happy. But now we go to, I mean, one of the most fascinating things about you that I saw when I was, looking through your Instagram is you're a legislative aide. And I said that we talk about this a little bit more because we have never had a legislative aide on the podcast. So first of all, what inspired you to become a legislative aide? And then, well, the second part of the question would be, so what do you do? What is a legislative aide? What is your duty, basically? What does your average day look like?
Yeah, so I work in politics. I got an internship that was necessary for a class when I was in college, which perpetuated into my career. And I work for one of the state representatives. And she's amazing. She's a great mentor. And basically, my job is I'm the lead on constituent relations. So people call me to voice their opinions on different bills or issues in the community or ideas they have for legislation, things like that. I'm kind of like the connection between my boss and the general public because I they have to pretty much go through me to get to her. um, Average day, I mean, it's a 9 to 5 job. So an average day, actually, one of the reasons it's so interesting is because it's different every day. A lot of my work is in the office, dealing with constituent cases. It could be anything from like CPS to tax issues, things like that. Working on press releases, working on just activities that could go into the district. Like we just did a photo contest. A lot of times I'll attend town hall meetings just to be there on behalf of my boss because I mean she has like 10 events during the week and she can't be at all of them. So we kind of split that up. So yeah, I mean it's definitely interesting. There's always a lot going on. There's always new legislation coming up, and sometimes I feel like I'm like I try to keep in my head the female Arnold Schwarzenegger because he governor after his bodybuilding career.
Well, and I was gonna say, I bet you hear some interesting calls from people trying to like push legislation or whatever. Without naming names, what would you say was the most memorable call that you've gotten from someone when it comes to proposing something?
Oh my gosh, the most interesting one was a woman called because she felt there weren't enough men in our community, and she said she's a single woman,
Yeah.
there's not enough men here, and we need more jobs. She said our unemployment rate is too low, and it's gonna get all the men to go out of Michigan. I'm like, this is not a state issue. This is something you gotta work on yourself. I don't know what to tell you.
Oh my god, yeah. If I got a call like that, I would be like, oh my god, this is the weirdest thing.
Well, right, and just, like, having to, like, converse about it and be like, "Ah, okay, yes, I understand it's frustrating. There's nothing our office can do for you."
Jeez, yeah, that's definitely interesting. Yeah, that's definitely a great one too. But is there anything that really you take from having this lifestyle that really helps you with the legislative aid? Or is it more kind of like we were talking about, like the confidence thing too, where you're able to be more assertive, especially talking to people who might have ideas, as a little off-putting as those might be, to really just be a little bit more, like, hey, like we're sorry about that, because a lot of times just being able to communicate to people can be such a hard thing for so many people.
Right, and I think, that's definitely true. It goes back to the time management as well and prioritizing. I mean, every single day I start with making a to-do list for outside of work and while I'm at work, and I work on those things in 20 to 30-minute increments, then take a break, and then go back to it. And bodybuilding is definitely what started that. I think I'm a much better worker because of bodybuilding. I don't get as distracted as easily. I'm very focused, and it just I don't know. I can definitely get mentally exhausted in the job too, and like knowing that I can go to the gym afterwards and go for, you know, do something for prep always makes it a lot better as well.
Yeah, and that's one thing too that really helps people out, is that the gym can just be such a release for people where it comes, just taking their frustrations or their anger out on the weights. And yeah, I mean, I've done that plenty of times. But you're also a personal trainer. What made you want to become a personal trainer and help out others? Was it just that having that background in the gym where you're just like, hey, I could really help out others now too?
Yeah, so I was basically living there when I was prepping for my shows, and so I got to know the other personal trainers, and they didn't have any female trainers left, so they talked to me about doing it and getting hired, and I was like, okay, I'll try it out, and I love it now. It's definitely another passion of mine because, like I said, like I deal with these complaints and stuff all day. So then another part of my job, being a personal trainer, is making people happy and everyone's in a good mood and people feel good working out, and I feel like I'm helping that way instead of the opposite where I'm getting complaints all day and stuff like that.
And let's be honest, you basically have to become a psychologist too, basically, or a therapist too, if you're becoming a personal trainer when you're dealing with people. So you might as well just have gotten your degree basically in psychology. That's what I always say to people, because just dealing with that, and that can be another huge thing too. I mean, and just really connecting with your clients too. But what would you say is the number one thing that you always that you struggle with, or number one myth that you struggle with as a personal trainer when it comes to new clients?
So no matter what, I always get a little bit nervous as soon as I get a new client, like we're not gonna connect or anything, but I've actually had the opposite problem where my clients become my friends and then I don't want to charge them anymore
Yeah.
because like, they're my friends. Um, so I don't know, there's been certain things like one of my clients was she had a cancer scare recently and she hasn't been able to work out, so I've obviously still been contacting her every day, like, how are you feeling? I mean, this is way out of my scope of knowledge or anything, but like checking in on her and because like I do care about her and like I know there is a line between their personal lives and, just being their personal trainer, but like I said, you learn to care about these people and you do build a relationship with them. And, it's like a relationship like anything else.
And that's just so great too, because just having that job where you really know that like you're making a good change. And one of the questions that I love to ask every personal trainer that we have on is, what is that feeling like for you when you see them get those results? Because we see on Instagram all the time, like, those before and after photos, and we get the reaction of what it's like for the person that's made those changes. But what is that feeling like for you as the personal trainer, knowing that you played such a huge impact in them making that adjustment in their lives and getting healthier and stronger?
Oh my gosh, it's why I eventually want to make a personal training a full-time thing with like I want to start my own business because it makes me so happy. Every time they're happy because they made progress because of something I told them to do or a plan I gave them, like it's exhilarating and like it feels even better than when I accomplish my own goals, just the fact that somebody else benefited from it. So that's definitely the best part. I love getting like I always give my phone number out to my clients. So and I'm like any questions, anything, like we can talk about it. And hearing that they lost weight or they got a new PR and whatever, I love hearing about it. It makes my day.
Yeah, and it's just yeah, I mean, and I just can't imagine what that feels like knowing that you are behind that. But now, two of the questions that I like to ask again, all of our health and fitness guests are, for me, obviously, personally, there were so many positive things going into the gym for me that really, really impacted me and really just helped me out so much. But there's one negative thing: you're going to get asked to move a lot of people's furniture. You're gonna get asked to open a lot of pickle jars. I mean, I'm still at home with my parents for the next couple of months before I move out, and every time they come home with groceries, I gotta basically lift the car into the driveway and then carry in the groceries. Has that been a similar thing with you where people take one look at you, or especially family members, they just assume that you can do favors for them then?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I don't mind it. Like,
Mhm.
I take it as a compliment. Um, but no, that's definitely true. The pickle jar thing has happened before, and even moving my dog's cage, like it's like I don't even know how much that thing weighs, but I'm always like lugging it around, and I think people just think I got it because I have Great Dane and I lift, and
It's
he's
not
one of
it's
the
not a
reasons.
cage, it's a
Out.
fence, let's be honest.
Yeah, exactly. It feels like a car. I always say that he
It's a
escaped the back
wall,
of
actually,
the house.
probably, yeah. No, yeah, and yeah, I mean, I always say for me too, I mean, it's the only reason why I didn't like it at first is because I got asked so often because being 6'3", I mean, you get asked regardless, where it's always, "Oh, Tog, I can do it." So every other weekend last summer, I mean, a different friend, "Hey, Ryan, you wanna come help me move?" And it's like, I don't want to, but I'll do it, but don't expect me to just be, like, happy-go-lucky, like, walking up to you. I mean, but I'll do it, but it's just one of those things where you realize too that, like, they notice that you're working out and that you're in shape, so you take that with a grain of salt. But my favorite question to ask, and I think it's my audience favorite, but there's so many issues that come up with being a muscular woman when it comes to your clothing options. I mean, guys have their own problems, women have their own problems as well. I always say if you're a woman, you have big broad shoulders, dresses aren't your best friend. Jeans are another thing we hear of all the time because if you have a big lower body and a small waist, jeans are not built for you. So what have been some ways that you have found that you're able to compensate for the fact that your clothing options can be limited?
Well, leggings are a girl's best friend for
Mhm.
sure. And because I go from about a size 0 to a size 5 throughout the year, depending on which season I'm in, um, I just buy a lot of like the t-shirt dresses and, blazers. Blazers can fit many sizes, stuff like that. So it has to be like almost like a one size fits all type of option.
Mhm.
But I definitely have my prep clothes and my bulking clothes.
Yeah, and I always say that, you basically have to have 2 wardrobes because, yeah, like you said, you're bulking, but yeah, if anyone could come up with a line that, is just it really just fits anyone or anything like that, and especially come up with, like, dresses or for guys come up with, like, suits, that would be so helpful to so many people. But now we go to our audience favorite, my personal favorite part of the podcast, a little questionnaire where we're gonna ask our guest here about a dozen or so health and fitness related questions, sort of a getting to know you, and we're going to see how our answers stack up to everyone else that we've had on the show. So, for our first question, what is your go to workout song at the moment?
Ooh, that's a good one. I love listening to Carnage Radio and, um, Bullet for My Valentine.
Ooh.
A little bit harder, but it really gets me in, like, kind of an aggressive mindset.
Well, and that's awesome. I love, I love that sort of more aggressive music, especially if I'm training legs. Like if I got legs, I got to get my Metallica or
Oh,
my
yeah.
Iron Maiden and stuff because you know that it's going to be a rough day. But I got to have my classic '80s music, my cheesy '80s music. But I have a gym at home that I train at most of the time. But when I do go to a normal gym, I'm one of those people where I got to wait for the beat to drop. So if I'm doing any exercise, even like a lat pull down, I'll be waiting there. I've had people come up to me and be like, "Hey, dude, are you all right? Did you like pull out your back or something?" I'm like, "Nope, just waiting for the beat to drop." So I am known throughout the gym as the guy that waits for the beat to drop. But hey,
I'm the same way. I love waiting for that beat to drop before I start.
what adds the adrenaline too, and I mean, you can normally lift more when you have that, extra. You're more pumped up, and you got more of the adrenaline. So yeah, if anyone wants to try it, I mean, I definitely recommend trying it. It's definitely something that I think works for me. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train with any celebrity, who would it be?
Beyonce, she just always looks so good. She is so strong. I mean, her legs are amazing. She's got some stallion legs on her. I don't know how she does it.
Believe it or not, that is the first Beyonce we've ever heard in the podcast, and you're gonna be close to
Really?
you're gonna be like guess 235, I think. Close to that, but for health and fitness, you're gonna be like about 150. But yeah, so that's the first time that we've heard Beyonce. We normally hear Dwayne the Rock Johnson's like 80% of our answer. But I'm like, okay, it's Dwayne the Rock Johnson, or they'll have like a Mark Wahlberg, or they'll do like an Arnold, or like Dana Lynn Bailey's another. Probably for the women, that's been the highest one, and then like Paige Hathaway. But yeah, Beyonce, yeah, for sure, that would be a great workout. But now, out of all the celebrities on the planet, if you could train any celebrity, who would it be?
Ooh, that's a great question. I'm trying to think of like anybody that was in oh, I can't even think of the movie. Anybody that's in like Parks and Rec.
Oh yeah,
Who what's the guy's name that he's gotten in great shape recently?
Chris Pratt.
Chris Pratt, yeah, he used to be kind of fluffy and chubby, and I want to know what he did to get in such great shape because he looks awesome now.
Let's be honest, he had his own personal trainer, he had his own
Yeah,
chef cook him in. It's like people don't realize how easy that life would be to maintain that look when you have everyone doing all of your work for me. Like if you came home from working out and you had your meal like already like freshly cooked from a 5-star chef, and then you're like, okay, all I have to do is eat this and drink, a protein shake. Cool. And then you have
you
personal,
pay somebody to put
yeah.
that food on.
Oh yeah, and then you have your own personal trainer that basically like wakes you up in the morning and just says we got to get going to the gym basically and like force you to do stuff. I mean, it's like yeah, it's so that there's a reason why those Hollywood people are able to maintain. And that's one of the things that I hate the most is that they'll post like these Instagram videos where it's like, "Oh my god, getting ready for a movie role," and they're curling like these 1-pound dumbbells. And then next thing you know, like a month later, they're super lean down. So then people think that like that's what you have to do to look like that, or that's what you can look like that doing. And I was like, let's be honest, just post about how you have your own personal chef and how you have your own whatever, and basically, yeah, that's one of those ridiculous things that.
Well, and you know what's interesting to me too is I know a lot of bands hire personal trainers to
Mhm,
travel them with them when they're on tour because
mhm,
traveling is hard on the body, and
yep.
I think it'd be really cool to get hired in a position like that where you could go with the band and create workouts in the different cities they're touring. I've always thought that would be a really cool idea.
I was gonna say my goal early on when I started out, because when I started out this podcast, I did just bands for about 70 guests, and I still do bands every once in a while. But my goal with that was I wanted to like go on tour with a band and just like film their experience and like show like what it was like. But that didn't happen. Or I mean, I'm still a call away. Like if a band calls and says like, "Hey, we're going on tour. You want to come and like film it with us?" I'd be like, yes, hell yeah, I'd go on tour with you guys. But yeah, that would be awesome. I mean, we just had Garth Brooks play at the Viking Stadium last night, and a lot of my friends went to that. So yeah, it's just I always would say like if I could live one life, it would be that weird rock star life where literally, I mean, it's not even like a human life really, where you're just like tour. It's not human. It's just weird. Like you tour around and
For real.
just get to yeah. That would be amazing. But now going back to the questionnaire, what is one item that you always need to have in your fridge?
Greek yogurt and definitely the chicken.
Yep, we hear that chicken all the time, but Greek yogurt, yes. But I always say the shocking answer that I've always heard about 10 times, I'd say, is mustard. Never would have guessed it in a million years, but because it's 0 calories, 0 in fat, these bodybuilders, they just douse their crap in mustard. And I always say, you might want to reevaluate your life if you're having to put mustard on your stuff to make it taste better. But,
I put mustard on some weird things, but
yeah,
I've gotten
yeah.
to that point.
Well, I was always a team ketchup guy too, so I was like, and then people are like, oh, you can use like the low fat or the low fat or low sugar ketchup, and I was like, that does not taste like ketchup, so you gotta find something. But yeah, it's always fascinating to find out what people like to have in there. And Greek yogurt, yeah, is one of our most popular answers too. But now, out of all your followers that you have on Instagram, what would be one thing that you think they would be surprised to find out about you if they met you in person?
That I am not I struggle with the diet part
Hmm.
of this. I do my workouts and my cardio to a T, but just like everybody, diet is the hardest part. I lose control sometimes and overeat. I feel like a lot of people just think I have it on lock and I don't.
Yeah.
And it's a learning experience and it's something that I have to work on every day and like mentally prepare myself with. And a lot of times I have to skip social events because I know I can't handle being around the food. So that's probably one of the biggest thing that people just think it's a breeze for me and I can do it. Like no, like I love to eat and sometimes restricting myself is a huge challenge. I mean, I'm scared of hunger and I'll admit that.
For me, that would be if I ever really did a bodybuilding show, that would be by far the biggest thing that I would struggle with too, just because I am so used to eating a certain way and doing certain things there. That's just one of those things where mentally that would be such a hard thing for me to do. But now, if
Mhm.
someone were to come up to you and say, like, we decided that you can change one thing about the sport of bodybuilding and everyone would go along with it, what would be one thing that you would like to see changed?
One thing changed in bodybuilding. I've always had an issue with how the natural and unnatural competitors are just mixed in together.
Hmm.
Um, I compete naturally, so a lot of the people I go up against are not natural, and sometimes I just don't really feel like that's fair, even though I could use hormones if I wanted to, or I could compete in a natural competition. But I don't know. I feel like there needs to be less of a gray area there because I remember my last show too. I was like, I have no idea who's on what I'm going up against, and um, we're all working really hard, but the people that are on the hormones, they're obviously going to make the most progress.
Well, and I always say too, it's like I don't have a problem with people doing stuff, but it's like
Right.
just be honest and just put them in a separate
Yeah.
division where they can do that. I mean, it's like more power to them. I mean, the side effects, good luck later on in life. But if you want to do it, if you really want to do it, I mean, it's your body. Do whatever you want to it, but just be honest about it too, because so many times there are these people online that are clearly on stuff, and then they try to promote people and say like you can look like me or whatever, and it's like, well, you might want to be honest about how you got that look. So it's yeah. That's another pet peeve of mine. But yeah, I totally agree with you with that. But now if you could go back in time and talk to the 18-year-old version of yourself, what would be the best piece of advice you would give her?
Wish I would have started this earlier. Maybe cut back on the drinking in college and competed when I was like 22 or
Mhm.
something.
Yep.
Um,
What college did you go to?
Michigan State University.
Yep. Yep.
What?
Was gonna say no, no, no. It's just because I went to Mankato in Minnesota, but I'm a huge Nebraska football fan, so they play
Um,
Michigan State all the time. So yeah, that's yeah. Whenever I hear Michigan State, but yeah, I say out of Michigan and Michigan State, I prefer Michigan State over Michigan. So
me too.
you
Me
have me
too.
on that. Yeah. Although my high school's fight song was the Michigan fight song, but either
Oh,
way,
no way. Both my
Yep.
brothers go to Michigan, so I kind of have a love for it in a way.
Yeah. Oh yeah, it's a nice school. Like I've been to Detroit and because you can see when I was younger, we went to all these baseball stadiums and all these rally monkeys are from all the professional baseball stadiums that I went to. And the Tigers was one of them. And I got to say that was I thought I was gonna die when I was in Detroit. I'm not gonna lie, because we drove around at night after the game, and it was it was pretty sketchy. But Detroit was nice. But then we went to Michigan Stadium, the football stadium. But yeah, I've been to a lot of parts of Michigan. I haven't been to the Upper Peninsula yet, so that's one place that I'd probably want to go there. But yeah, that's awesome. But now for our last question of the questionnaire, if we were to talk to you a year from now, where would you like to be at in your life when it comes to your personal training, when it comes to your job, when it comes to bodybuilding? Where would you like to see yourself a year from now if we were to talk?
If things went perfectly a year from now, I would be hopefully holding my pro card. That's the end goal with bodybuilding. I want to eventually start my own personal training business. So I am working on that. I have a great foundation of clients right now. So there's a lot in the works, and I don't know if it will happen in a year, but if things went perfectly, that's what would happen.
And honestly, we wish you nothing but the best when it comes to that. And now our last few questions of the podcast, I should say, is So if someone were to walk up to you in the street and say like, "Oh my God, you look amazing. I want to get into shape and adapt a more healthy and fit lifestyle," what would be the best piece of advice you would give them in order for them to just be able to take that first step and walk into the gym and start? Because for so many people, just taking that first step is the hardest thing.
Yep. We actually, when we're campaigning for work, we have a little bit of a motto that we say, plan your work your plan. And I think you can apply that to anything. Make a plan, stay consistent. If you fall off of the plan, get right back on the next day. I mean, I'm sure everyone has heard that consistency is key, but it really is. And I think people get down on themselves too easily when they do mess up, when they get off their diet, when they take a couple days off the gym. Get back on it. Like, you're already ahead of everybody else that hasn't started yet. So that would be my number one advice.
Yeah, and I mean, I couldn't agree more with you on that. Is just take that step because you never know what's going to happen to it. But again, you guys, we cannot thank Patricia enough for coming on our podcast. I mean, you were awesome to talk to and sharing your journey. And lastly, is there anyone that you would like to give a shout out to?
I want to give a shout out to my coach. So the SYLL athlete on my Instagram is See You Later Leaner. That's his Instagram, and he's just been amazing. He's been a mentor. He's been a friend. He just cares so much about his clients. So number one shout out definitely goes to my coach for his support and getting me to where I'm trying to go.
And that's so awesome. And everyone, go and give both of them a follow. I'll leave a link to all of their stuff down below. And again, Patricia, we wish you nothing but the best. And thank you again so much for coming on. I really, really appreciate it. And this is Ryan Johnson, DD on the spot, signing out. Have a great day, everyone.